Hey, so El Conde. I watched that. It was on Netflix. I think it's still on Netflix. I watched it. Um, and I liked it. It was like an actual film, not just a movie, a film. Um, and so I don't know if you know about Augusto Pinochet, but an asshole dictator. Um, of Chile from like the 70s to 1990. And then I think he was still involved in some things here and there, and then died in 2006. Well, this Chilean film director, Pablo Larraín, he decided to make this movie about Pinochet. But what if Pinochet was a vampire? So it's actually pretty interesting. The conceit, I like the idea. It also turns out to be kind of like it's definitely a satire, but also kind of like a family drama situation with the his children coming to his estate to try to figure out how much money they're gonna inherit, and you know all these like kooky little things. But it's mostly quite macabre, but quite like amusingly grotesque in a way. Um, and definitely comes at it from a left wing perspective on illuminating Pinochet's and his folk, his vampiric folk uh, uh, behavior and atrocities. And I recommend it. There's potential issues with gender politics. I recommend a review by Hannah Strong, not Hannah, Hannah Strong at Little White Lies. That's an interesting take there that I somewhat agree with. But let's get into the spoilers. I recommend it. I think you like it. Just expect it to be a little bit cruel at times, as well as quite hilarious. And it's a artsy genre picture, right? There's some beautiful shots in it, and there's some vampire action, and and pokes fun at Pinochet, but also it's a little bit, you could kind of see kind of like a cynical take on right wing worldviews and the people in power who hold that view, who are pretty much everybody in power. But yeah, go watch it. It's interesting. Let's get into spoilers. So we're gonna go through the frickin' movie and just see what's going on. Now, this director, he's done movies like about Pinochet before. He has like a trilogy about it, which I have not watched. I did watch Spencer, which is his most recent film before this, about Princess Diana. I watched Jackie, about Jackie O, the first lady during Kennedy's presidency, right? Kennedy's wife, um, JFK. And those are interesting. I like that. Um, I like those movies. I think Spencer I liked more than Jackie. I know that's not to everybody's taste, but just like how he kind of goes into exploring the psyche of Diana uh, in her, you know, closer to I think I think it's like at the end of her life, right? Not quite up to the point where she has an accident, but it's interesting, fascinating, and definitely recommend it. But this movie, he he decides to go all in on genre in the sense of let's make a horror vampire movie, And let's talk about Pinochet. And I like, this little beginning here. We get a narrator who is revealed, who I think is probably one of the greatest reveals of the year. We'll get to it, but she's narrating about his life. Like, hey, guess what? Pinochet was actually French, born in France, lived during the Revolution, French Revolution, and witnessed the slaughter witnessed the execution of the monarchy there, including Marie Antoinette. And he was a vampire at that point, and that's what it didn't quite show you how he became a vampire. It would have been nice to see, kind of what makes sense with the whole theme of the movie of like the continuation of evil and monstrosity throughout time. Would have been interesting to see what other historical figure was a vampire that sired. Oh, wait a second. I think we do find out. It's Margaret Thatcher. Was he born a vampire? Is that what happened? Because like if you have a child, I don't know if it explained that well. I guess I assumed he was bitten, but what I'm remembering now, it's been like maybe a few days since I've seen it, but Margaret Thatcher at the end is revealed to be his mother, right? And we are in spoilers, so I warned you. So I guess he was born a vampire. Is that the situation? Anyways, he takes a souvenir, like a creep he is, of Marie Antoinette's head and decides to go to Chile because he feels like he can rule that place pretty easily because he's kind of an idiot. And fakes his own death in 2006. And for some reason, people don't see he's blinking here. Maybe that's just in his head that he's blinking. It's not really in real life. But he escapes into, I guess, the mountains and lives his life as a vampire, eating human hearts and stuff. Although this isn't quite him, we imagine he has been doing this for a while, and that's why he's getting old and withered. And apparently, it would seem his wife was feeding him blood to keep him alive. But he at the opening of this movie, he wants to die. He's kind of just tired of it all after being Pinochet and like successfully fucking up the country. But then we go to the church here, and this is seems like it's a critique of the church here. The whole idea here is that they're sending this young nun to go execute or exorcise the devil from Pinochet's body, the vampire, and get a bunch of documents in order to benefit the church and hold these allies of Pinochet and their ancestors hostage in order to get payouts and benefit the Catholic Church, it seems. That's the whole plan is revealed at the end. And it turns out also that his butler is a vampire too. And there's a whole little... I like how there's like all these little parties here that are trying to get ahead. And we got the butler and his wife at some points joining up too to take control over once Pinochet is gone, because he supposedly is going to want to die soon. And so the kids are showing up because, like, okay, is dad really gonna die? And so we got to get our money out of this. They've been living off some secret funds stored here and there. And really, this film reveals that even as a awful dictator, you can still, once you're out of power, if you survive, you can still live comfortably, and all your children have all these hidden accounts, this money everywhere. and they live fine and dandy and happy. So this really is kind of like a satire on the rich and powerful, right? Not exclusive to world leaders, but just with these fascist right wingers who engorge themselves in all this money exploited from the people below them, whether it's in government or the workers in factories, etc., etc. And so he reveals, he's like, hey, I got some papers and shit, that some documents that can point you to my money, and our money that is swindled from other people's other companies and the government itself, bunch of corrupt sources, and it doesn't matter. Of course, they just want that money. I guess here it's revealed that the butler is in fact a vampire. Um, Later on, he proposes to bite the wife, and the wife wants to be bitten by Pinochet. Pinochet is has always been reluctant. He's like, why would you want to live anyways? But I think that's a scene where he's convinced, or maybe a little later, that he's like, actually, I want to keep living. I think it's when she shows up, actually, because she's disguised as an accountant, and she's gonna help them with the money. She's a great presence. I think the cinematographer, I'm forgetting the name of the cinematographer and director, I'm sure, wanted to evoke Joan of Arc, that old movie, and just how they frame her face. She's teary-eyed sometimes. She's French. She's religious. So a lot of references to that and just general film history in general. But I do like this character because she's kind of like revealing the despicable nature of these people. And it's funny how like the things she says like right in their face, and like they're just so oblivious. And I think it's like you can take it as like maybe a little bit more some magical realism where she's like maybe expressing herself in not such a clear way, but then we're seeing it in how she's saying it in her head or something. It's like because it's such a blunt way of saying like, oh yeah, you guys just want the money. And like she says, like at some point she's like, oh yeah, these buildings you rent out, like this is a good way for people to make money, who don't want to work. The rich who don't want to work, they just get money from being landlords, etc. And like they're like, oh yeah, yeah, okay. Like they don't even like scoff at that or anything. And then she later compliments, another one of the kids for being just being an asshole, and he's like, "Oh, thank you." I think there's a point where he's convincing that himself that he wants to live now. Some great performances. I think they're the best performances of the movie. She's also early on. She was saying how like, oh, she wants to confront the devil and even touch the devil and be seduced and tempted by the devil. It's like really like an erotic way of saying it, which is kind of like what a lot of like these nunsploitation movies do, like eroticize the nature between a nun and God. And I think that like I was at this point I was rooting for the nun character, Carmen. Like she was coming in, she was manipulating these rich folk to give up their money. She's gonna take, she's gonna use that to her advantage and provide that and give that money to the church, or find a way for the church to get rich off it. And it felt like at least like yeah, I'm not, I am an atheist, so like, and I am, and even if I wasn't, I would be against uh, a lot of organized religion that's predatory in general on people, and so they're not exactly heroes. They're not painted as heroes in this movie, but I guess I was sympathizing with the nun, which is maybe a part of the intention of the movie because of Pinochet, how monstrous he is, and just his evil nature that, or the evils, as a vampire, a bad vampire, that I was rooting for Carmen here to succeed. And so it did kind of bum me out a little bit when she didn't succeed. But then again, this movie is kind of like trying to show like, hey, this monstrosity isn't easily defeated, and an entity like the church isn't the answer. They're just charlatans themselves. Um, and this evil is going to continue. That there's not really a character that offers an actual revolutionary solution or anything. But I think maybe Pablo didn't want to uh, fill up the movie with too much stuff going on, too many characters. But these scenes here are just beautiful of him just flying. Like it's like menacing but beautiful at the same time. Great landscape shots. Actually, let me look up the cinematography is by Edward Lackman. He's done several things. He's worked with Todd Haynes on Carol, on Far From Home. He's great, And they chose to do this in black and white. They actually shot this in black and white instead of like in color and then in post making it black and white. Gives it more of a gritty feel to it, and I think it's just he says it's just better overall to shoot in black and white if you're gonna make it black and white, because you can capture the contrast better that way. And so yeah, I think it's an excellent job here. She continues to just be a badass here. She just gets all giggly and stuff too. Here's where she gives him a backhand compliment, and he's like, yeah, like as if he's not being insulted. And then the thing I did feel was a little bit off though is that at some point she gets scared by the butler here, and I felt like that was a little bit kind of like too quick of a turn here. Like she's like she feels threatened by him when this whole time she didn't. Like she feels like super confident, and then here he is a vampire. I guess I wanted a little bit more build up here, because like here she doesn't seem that afraid, and then suddenly right here she's like, oh, she's creeped out. Of course he gets close and she's about to bite her, so it does make sense. But I guess I wanted maybe a couple more dialogue scenes between them to get to that point where we feel like, oh yeah, she's realizing he's a monstrous vampire too, and she needs to be afraid. This is probably the best shot of the film. Just him standing there, another comedic little moment here where he wished they made a bust out of him. Why not? They got Allende, they got these other presidents there, but not Pinochet. Wonder why? Because you're an asshole. And see, that was a fun little moment there. And now the plots are thickening, and the butler reveals, like, hey, I was the one who's actually eating those hearts, in the beginning of the film. I put on the cape because I want to be the next king here. And we get the exorcism scene. Like, this scene was pretty cool, but again, I felt like she got won over by vampire here, by Dracula Pinochet, a little too quickly. Like, I was thinking she would have put up more resistance, but maybe that's the point of the movie. It's like, hey, God's not gonna save you. It's futile what you're doing, and she quickly succumbs to the vampire's charm there. And now they're fucking and they're kissing, and she gets fangs now. And suddenly she's all into it. She's like, well, that's it. I wanted some more, maybe not inner dialogue, but some more inner insights on like what her emotional state between the point where she was doing the exorcism and the point where she embraces the vampire. Like, we need a little more of that. But in general, it's fine, I guess. And we get this scene, which, okay, maybe several of these are the best shots of the film. This is definitely the best sequence, the most beautiful sequence of the whole film, of her flying here. Looks very witchy, very Satanist witch here, flying in the sky. Like, how can you not love that? Just some beautiful shots there. Just amazing. And so at this point I was like, okay, well, actually this might be really interesting now. Yeah, so now she's a vampire. Maybe now she'll take power. She'll kill Pinochet and actually be a good vampire or something. She'll reject the church. She'll reject Pinochet's worldview, and she'll become a socialist vampire. Right? But no, she's young, and Mama comes to save the day for Pinochet. This reveal has to be the best reveal of the year, and maybe the best appearance of Margaret Thatcher here. Now, Margaret Thatcher was the Prime Minister of the UK during Reagan's time in the 80s. She's referred to as the Iron Lady, etc., etc. She's a neoliberal's wet dream, and along with Reagan, and she was awful too. And it turns out she was a narrator the whole time, and she reveals to Pinochet now, hey, you're actually my son, because she gets raped by this vampire, and she enacts revenge and leaves a baby at some orphanage or something. Where was it? I don't know. At some rich French family's house or something. And we go here with Margaret supporting Pinochet, and this is pretty realistic here in the sense that she supports right-wingers and fascists in her history. And I guess she sensed that the nun was getting too close to her son here, and she needed to put an end to it, and she demands her death. But then his wife comes in, and now it's gonna be a battle, right? Well, actually, they're getting ready. They're teaming up, and they're like, well, we gotta take out Pinochet for real and take over. While the oldest vampire here is in full control, really. I wonder, we never get to see where she came from. That's what we need to see, right? Who sired Margaret Thatcher? Actually, we did see that. We saw her get bitten by that awful dude. What I meant to say is, who sired that dude? You know, it would have been nice to be if it was a more meaningful historical figure, right? But it's fine. Um, his little man cave here with his old relics. Dress up as Marie Antoinette for me, please, my darling. But she rejects him. It's like, fuck off. I'm flying at it. It's dump. And now it's time for some stakes in the heart. But oops, Pinochet stabs his wife, and she gone. And now the butler's like, oh, that was my love. I loved her. And he's all depressed and has to run away, I guess. And this is where it's revealed that the real intentions behind the nun's appearance here at Pinochet's estate. She's got the document. She's going to go to the church, but the butler finds her, and as revenge against his master, Pinochet, he plans to decapitate the new love in revenge because Pinochet killed his wife that he loved, that the butler loved. So a lot of murder of women here, which is unsightly. But again, these are patriarchal figures who do as they please, who actually is being led by Margaret, a woman, actually, because the gender politics are a little bit mixed here. And although we do see that these men are fragile and evil, the film does seem to indicate that there's always an evil woman behind the scenes, to the side. I think maybe Pablo was going more for the idea that with every great that cliche of with every great intelligent man, there's a woman at his side or something that contributed a lot or more. And he's just flipping it. It's like, oh, with every horrible man, there's also a horrible woman to his side. And one can read it a little bit misogynistically. That little white lies review pointed that out. But I think it's kind of like, I understand that reading, but also Pablo has made a lot of movies with female leads, like Jackie, like Spencer, who give them their point of view. And so I don't think his intent was malicious, which isn't necessarily, doesn't necessarily invalidate the critique that he could have done something a little different. But in the end of the day, I was a little bit annoyed by the death of the nun and the idea that maybe oh, Pinochet isn't as evil because it was his wife all along who made all these decisions that led him on. It is a little bit icky, but at the same time, Margaret Thatcher is real. She's a freaking evil person, and deserves to be treated like a vampire, just like Pinochet in this fantasy movie. Because women can be many things, including evil, but not exclusively. So it would have been nice to see an anarchist or a communist character or something, who maybe a woman who would have been opposed to all this and would have we would have seen a different side. But like I said again, Paula wanted to focus on the monsters here. And so here at the end, they just take what they can, the kids, as vampire Pinochet leaves with his mommy Margaret, and the nuns get there late, and try to, I guess, cleanse the place. And so here the reveal is that they drink this blood, this old blood, or this new blood from a vampire, sorry, and that is very potent, and that will get them to relive, to I guess rejuvenate them, all the way to the point where Pinochet becomes a kid apparently, while Margaret stays the mommy. I guess she's a little bit younger, right? We get it's color now, so we're transitioning to a brand new world here, in which they're starting over. In a sense, he's going to this nice private school, and he'll probably become a right wing politician in Chile, right? And Margaret will be there helping him out. Maybe Margaret, I don't know. It appears kind of like she's kind of like trying to, uh, regain history or get closer to the son that she left behind. At the time she was young when she left him, but kind of a redo. She wants a redo with her son. So it would seem that like she's kind of just wants to be this motherly figure for him and guide him. At the end there, and just to signify that like these monsters and the legacy of Pinochet and monsters like him uh, are immortal in a way, as long as there's not resistance to take them down, and that his legacy lives on in modern Chile, in the world in general, and there's a bunch of right-wing vampires and dictators and fascists in this world right now that we've got to look out for, and the legacy continues. So it is a bit of a cynical ending, and I didn't watch a lot of his other political films, like one called No, which is about I think Pinochet's final days, I think, in power. Or maybe it's about his reign. Maybe it's the beginning, but that one had a little more hopeful ending, I believe, which focused on, I think, a more of a revolutionary character. This time maybe Pablo's like become more cynical in his older age. I don't know, or he could just wanted to end it like a horror movie, where in a horror movie, often the monster prevails, but also some horror movies we get, the final girl, the final guy who typically final girl who does get out alive. So he could have done that, but I think he wanted to emphasize the monstrosity that still exists in the real world right now. You can point to many world leaders, many billionaires who can be considered vampires, whether it's Bezos, Musk, whether it's Putin, whether it's a Trump, whether it's any dictator. We could refer to them as vampires, and I think that's what he wanted to accomplish there. And I think in general, he did a good job of that, and I enjoyed my time. It was kind of like similar to that movie, The Death of Stalin, which is also about like the end of another world dictator's demise, and the people around him trying to vie for power, like how they were gonna grasp power when Stalin was gone. It was a satire. This one was, of course, more fantastical. So, it's fun little historical fiction dramas that I think, just illustrate in a satirical way the just the awfulness and evilness of these rulers, and the potential for more to spring in their wake, And it gets you thinking, like, who else could you call a vampire these days? And I'm sure a lot of people have called different world leaders vampires. But in recent times, in this week with the whole situation in Israel, in Palestine, with the war against Hamas, like you start thinking who are the vampires in that situation, right? Who are the vampires there? And people perhaps would be a little bit afraid to speak up about that, worrying that they'll be called anti-Semitic or something, perhaps, by saying that, oh, maybe Netanyahu is a vampire. Well, funny you say that, because there's actually in Iran some years ago, this guy, and Iran's only Jewish MP in 2017, called Netanyahu an insane vampire. So there are people who do feel that way about Netanyahu, and other people. These days, the Haaretz newspaper blames Netanyahu for the atrocities that Hamas has committed. His apartheid policies that contributed to propping up Hamas, and then and then segregating and caging up the Gaza Strip, and treating Palestinians like less than human, like a vampire would. So there's definitely something to that connection between some horrible people in real life and vampires. And I doubt they would make a vampire movie about Netanyahu, but in this climate right now, but maybe in the future, and certainly one could probably make one more easily of someone like Putin or Trump or something. I mean, that'd be interesting, right? Although I'm sure that could be easily done not so well. I think Pablo Larraín here did it effectively. Like, it's not with El Conde. It's not like a jokesy, unserious take. It's actually quite a grotesque take, and quite gorgeous as well, as I say here in this toot. Well, folks, I guess I'll do it for El Conde. It's on Netflix. It's probably available other places. At some point, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if it's caged on Netflix right now, but you can get other places if you know what you're doing. But yeah, I recommend it. I like it. It's gonna be like maybe might be in my top 10. It's that good, actually. Just like, I think just the cinematic aspect of it, just like not only just how it looks, but just the structure of it, and just the weight of it, how the impact of it while you're watching, like it feels like it's saying something, that's interesting, versus like just a campy vampire film, which could have been fun too, a whole different vibe. But I think it is important to illuminate and shine a light on horrible people in history and today. I think, whether it's through news reporting or through filmmaking. And I am hopeful that we get more movies like this, bit of contemporary people, because it's a little easier to critique uh, a dictator in the past, and I think he did a good job of actually including Margaret Thatcher, because she's a little more revered by people than Pinochet. Like, Pinochet more easily is accepted as evil, while there's still a lot of liberal people or conservatives who still appreciate Margaret Thatcher and Reagan. So I think that was nice that he did include Margaret Thatcher as an evil figure so prominently. But I would like to see some more contemporary figures, because, say you do a vampire movie about Netanyahu being a vampire, like, maybe that could actually influence more people today to actually do something about that apartheid. Maybe that could be a stronger message than if you do that film in 20 years when he's no longer in power. Just an idea. And of course, it's going to be controversial, but a lot of good art is controversial, right?